Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I actually heard a conversation on the radio the other day by my guy, Vince Quinn, and I'm actually working with Vince over at The Spark. He's a great guy. Check out his work. And he was talking about, he does local radio in Philadelphia, and he was talking about the Eagles' decision to move on with the future with Carson Wentz in charge instead of Nick Foles. And I kind of thought, especially after last season, that most people would just think like, okay, even though Nick Foles did win the Eagles the Super Bowl, and even though Nick Foles is a genuinely loved guy in Philadelphia, it's Carson Wentz is the more talented player, and the Eagles just have to move on. And eventually that's what they did. And I thought, especially after last season, Eagle fans would think like, all right, they just made the right decision. But apparently that is not the case, as there are some Eagle fans that still think that Nick Foles should be their starting quarterback and that their franchise would be in a better position right now with Nick Foles as their starting quarterback than Carson Wentz. And here's the thing. I did not think Nick Foles would perform as bad as he did in Jacksonville. Like, the bottom line is he just wasn't very good, and that contract really didn't work out, and the Jaguars decided to cut ties with him for Gardner Minshew, a sixth-round pick, a guy that's decent, and a guy that I actually praised earlier in the show. But at the same time, like, I think we could all agree, like, he's not definitely, no doubt, the franchise quarterback of the future in Jacksonville. But going back to Nick Foles, we obviously all know that in 2017, Carson Wentz was having a great season. I personally think he was on pace to win the MVP. And unfortunately for him, he tore his ACL in Los Angeles against the Rams, and Nick Foles came in and ended up leading the Philadelphia Eagles to their first Super Bowl championship. And last year, Nick Foles actually returned to Philadelphia as the backup, and Carson Wentz was the starter, and the season wasn't great for Philadelphia. At the beginning of the season last year, I think you were clearly able to tell that Carson Wentz wasn't right. He wasn't 100% healthy. The Eagles weren't playing great, and we all know what eventually ended up happening. Nick Foles came in, and the Eagles were really trailing in a big game against the LA Rams, and he came in and ended up winning that game for Philadelphia. He ended up going to Washington the following week, getting the Philadelphia Eagles into the playoffs, and ended up winning another playoff game for them. That was actually over the Chicago Bears in the double doink game, and if it wasn't for Alshon Jeffrey dropping that pass in the end zone against the New Orleans Saints, there actually is a pretty good chance that the Philadelphia Eagles would have made back-to-back NFC Championship games under the guidance of Nick Foles. But with all that being said, and I will totally admit, going into last season, I don't want to say I wasn't fully convinced on Carson Wentz, but at the same time, I did have my concerns. And that's just because I thought Nick Foles was really good and Carson Wentz wasn't good the year prior. But I always thought the Eagles should have stayed with Carson Wentz just based on talent alone, just based on the fact that he's much younger, based on the fact that they invested the number 2 overall pick in him that they got from the Cleveland Browns in that 2016 draft, and they gave up so much capital in order to retain Carson Wentz and his draft rights. And I was just like, all right, the Eagles, this guy's more talented. It's the right move to keep Carson Wentz and move on from Nick Foles, even though Nick Foles won you a Super Bowl. And last year, I loved what Carson Wentz did. I totally understand that everyone is going to ask, can this guy stay healthy? We all know he's had his injury concerns. But he did start every single game under center for the Philadelphia Eagles last season. And the thing that really impressed me about Carson, a couple more things. Number one, last season didn't originally, to start, go great for Philadelphia. They lost a couple games that they really just had no business losing, whether it was that home game to the Detroit Lions, whether it was getting blown out by the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. That game wasn't close. So you guys also remember the game they lost to the Miami Dolphins on the road. That was a loss no one really expected. And Carson Wentz, after that loss, was like, all right, boys, just hop on my back. The whole team was hurt. And eventually he led the Philadelphia Eagles to a NFC East division title with his number 1 receivers being Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So that's what really impressed me about Carson Wentz and the job he did last year. When you also combine the fact that Nick Foles had an awful season last year. And I understand he broke his collarbone after literally a quarter. And if he doesn't get hurt, the season could have obviously gone a different way in Philadelphia. But at the same time, once again, the Jacksonville Jaguars decided to move on from Nick Foles for Gardner Minshew. And I understand Minshew was a very good story. And, the fans love him. He has a mustache. But he's not a lock to be the guaranteed future franchise quarterback in Jacksonville? He's not. And also, the Jaguars paid him a boatload of money, invested a bunch in him, and they said, okay, we'd rather you just not be on our team, and we're going to trade you to the Chicago Bears for a 4th-round pick, even though we're still going to be paying you. The Chicago Bears are paying you not to be, the Jacksonville Jaguars are not paying you not to be on their team. That just shows you how less they think of Nick Foles and how they don't really consider Nick Foles to be that good anymore. It's also not a guarantee that Nick Foles is going to be starting over Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago. Once again, that tells you all you need to know. And when the Eagles have a young quarterback with the upside and the potential of Carson Wentz, who really showed last year what exactly he could do, and he really elevated his game for the first time since that ACL injury, and that's a really good sign if you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan. Carson Wentz is one of the main reasons why I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be very, very good in 2020. Right now, I think the Philadelphia Eagles, if I were to pick, will win the NFC East in 2020, and Carson Wentz has a lot to do with it. I love the upside of his game. I think that he makes other players around him better, and I'm just shocked that there are still some Philadelphia Eagle fans in Philadelphia, and Vince actually dealt with them a bunch on his show, that actually think the Eagles made the wrong choice by moving on from Nick Foles and going to Carson Wentz and committing to him as their full franchise quarterback, when also at the same time, Nick Foles has looked awful since he's left the city of Philadelphia. I think he's going to be okay in Chicago this season. I don't want to call him a system quarterback because I do think he's a good player, and I think he deserves some credit for obviously everything he's done throughout his NFL career. But not only have we not seen Nick Foles ever start 16 games, but at the same time, we haven't really ever seen this guy succeed in a system that's not, related to Andy Reid's coaching tree. We all know we saw him with Chip Kelly, but that's a long time ago. That's 7-8 years ago now, and that was a good year, but that was a season that no one saw coming in the years following that, whether it was under Chip Kelly in Philadelphia, whether it was under Jeff Fisher in St. Louis with the Rams, or whether it was under Andy Reid in Kansas City, where he couldn't really even get on the field. Nick Foles, once again, hasn't really been able to succeed in a system that's not in that range of a coaching tree. And this season, he's going to be able to do that in Chicago. But that just once again shows you how limited Nick Foles is as a quarterback. I guarantee you that if you put Carson Wentz in any of those systems, not only could he succeed, but he could even do better than that. I think he's a stud. I love the upside of his game, and I think Carson Wentz is going to be an MVP candidate in 2020. I know it's an early, bold prediction, but I think he's that good, and I'm just still very surprised that there are some Philadelphia Eagle fans out there who still actually believe that Nick Foles should be their starting quarterback right now, when, to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if this season doesn't go that well in Chicago. Like Nick Foles, if he's cut by the Bears and maybe a free agent. I'm not trying to diminish him. He did a great job in Philadelphia winning them that Super Bowl, but at the same time, he is what he is, and that is a good backup quarterback, an above average backup quarterback. And I think when you look at Nick Foles, obviously Eagle fans are going to hold him in high regards. He did something for that franchise, which no quarterback ever in Philadelphia has ever done, including Carson Wentz. But I'll tell you what, I think if I were to say who is more likely to lead the Philadelphia Eagles to another Super Bowl championship in the near future, is it Carson Wentz or is it Nick Foles? Isn't everyone just going to be saying Carson Wentz? That's not really a question, right? I think if Nick Foles is the quarterback of the Eagles last year with the talent they had, especially toward the back end of the season, it would have gone very differently than the way it actually did with Carson Wentz leading the way and the Philadelphia Eagles winning an NFC East Division championship. And I think if I was an Eagle fan, that's a big reason why I would be very happy and very positive going into the season, is because hopefully you're going to be healthy now. Not only did your defense improve by getting Javon Hargrave and Darius Slay, but also your receivers should be healthy. healthy and should be better. You get Jalen Reagor. You get another season of Arcega-Whiteside. Hopefully, he keeps on developing. You have Miles Sanders for another year, who actually tweeted out the other day that he's an MVP candidate in 2020, or he thinks he is. I'm very fascinated by that comment, but we'll see. I like when players have confidence. And I just think overall, if anyone thinks the Philadelphia Eagles really made the wrong move by moving on from Nick Foles and committing to Carson Wentz as their quarterback, they're just not paying attention based on what both guys did last year.